Oh, I didn't know you could do that.
Do what?
That's cool.
I feel like we need some background music.
It's funny.
I
You
could-
see my clock ticking. Like,
I tried to do that on one of my little webinar things I was doing, to have background music playing from my computer, but it just didn't come through the audio. It feels right though. Feels right.
yeah, I literally have this giant clock, and it's like this I forgot how loud it was. All right. I think we can get started here.
Cool.
Alrighty. So I keep forgetting to introduce myself on all of these panels because I've done so many now. I just assume people know me. But I am Nicole Forbes. I am the content manager for Equitana USA. I am thrilled to have you guys here today. As some of you may know, I came from a thoroughbred industry background. Not that I was born into it by any means. My entire family thought I was crazy for being a horse racing fan. But I fell in love with the sport, went to the University of Arizona's racetrack industry program, and worked at Monmouth Park for 9 years almost. So I love the industry, even though I'm not actively working in it today. I am now with Equitana USA, and I am very excited for everyone to share their stories about the thoroughbred industry and what's going on and how to get involved. So today's panel is presented by Amplify Racing, and they are doing an amazing job at breaking down some of these barriers to entry, because I know it's very intimidating to get involved in racing. So we're going to learn more about how to do that today. So with that, I'd like to introduce Anise, and she will introduce you to our panel of thoroughbred enthusiasts.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. And thank you so much, Nicole, for having us on. Nicole should pretty much be one of our panelists for tonight, representing some of the different careers you can take after you've been through a thoroughbred industry educational program. But my name is Anise Pleasure. I'm the co-founder of Amplify Horse Racing, which is an initiative to promote education and careers in the thoroughbred industry, because there's such a wide variety of amazing opportunities, from technical training programs, hands-on training programs, university programs, and there's also such an amazing array of careers. A lot of people who initially discover the thoroughbred industry think, okay, well, my career options are to be a trainer or a vet or a jockey. So we're on tonight with 4 amazing individuals who all have very different careers and jobs in the thoroughbred industry, and also took very different educational pathways. So I'm going to introduce you. Well, actually, I'm going to have each one of our panelists introduce themselves. And throughout the night, we're going to talk about what their job is in the thoroughbred industry, what that role entails, but then also going back to the educational program where they gained some of those skills that brought them to their current job. And then we'll wrap up with them giving you a bit of advice if you're interested in learning more about being educated and pursuing a career in the thoroughbred industry. We'll talk about that as well. So we're going to start with Katie Cadell, and then we'll have Alex Sosville, Brianne Sharp, and Aaron West. But Katie, you go ahead and introduce yourself to all of us and tell us where you work and what that job entails.
My name is Katie Cadell, and I work for a local thoroughbred farm called Blackwood Stables. And we focus on the training, the education, and the rehabilitation of thoroughbred racehorses. And my role within Blackwood is as our client relations director. So I'm kind of in charge of bridging the gap between everything that happens on the farm with clients' horses, and making sure, you know, everyone that needs to know about that horse is basically informed and kind of kept in the loop.
Awesome. And Alex, you are a recent graduate of a couple different programs, and I understand you're working for Breeders' Cup right now. So tell us about your role with Breeders' Cup and how you kind of got there.
Well, thank you, Anise, and thank you for having me on. I am a graduate of the University of Arizona Racetrack Industry Program, as well as the KIMI program here in Lexington. I am currently spending my time at the Breeders' Cup. We're coming up November 7th and 8th. It'll be a different year for the Breeders' Cup with everything going on, but I mean, my job has been consisting of various things, been working on some contractual things, working on trying to get some horses for the undercard. We have some really good undercard races this year, and just helping with various stuff around the office that we've been doing. It's really starting to pick up these last few weeks with the event just getting closer and closer. A lot of the win in your in races that horses are coming from the UK, Ireland, or anywhere in the US. We're getting those are coming down to the wire. So it's going to be an exciting time here in the next month or so.
For sure. And I should also actually have you explain to those of our non-thoroughbred people who might be watching, you know, what is Breeders' Cup and what are winning your in races? Just tell us about all of that.
So the Breeders' Cup is the Thoroughbred's biggest event of the year. We have $31 million in purses. It'll be at Keeneland this year in Lexington, November 7th and 8th. And what we do as the company to help bring an interest and to get horses here from all walks of life is to have these win in your in races where various tracks around the world will have sponsored races by us where the winner will get part of their travel stipend paid for, part of their entry fee, and just little incentives that help them come to Keeneland and race, because there's a lot of spots to race around the world, and we want to bring in as many of the good horses as we can.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alex. And Brianne Sharp is actually one of the first people who I met and started to idolize in the thoroughbred industry, because she had gone through this educational program called Godolphin Flying Start, which I ended up applying for and getting into. But we had met at Claiborne Farms many years ago.
You were a senior in high school, I think, were you?
So it was either a junior or senior, but I was very, you know, bright-eyed, like, oh my gosh, Brianne, she's so cool. I still think that. I still do. So Brianne, tell us about your job now, what that entails. And you also have to mention coding and how you've taught yourself to code.
Excellent. Okay, great. Yeah, it's crazy. How many years ago is that? It's been like 6 years ago since we met at Claiborne that one day. Crazy. Yeah. But yeah, so I work for Godolphin, which is one of the largest thoroughbred breeding and racing operations in the world. So we've got, you know, breeding farms and racing stables worldwide. So America, Europe, Australia, Japan. Our headquarters is in Dubai. And so what I do mainly is focus on stallion marketing and research. So we have 10 stallions standing here in Kentucky, and our stallion operation is called Darley. So the Darley stallions are kind of a sub-brand of Godolphin. And so we've got probably 60 or 70 stallions around the world, but we have 10 stallions that stand here in Kentucky. And so what we're trying to do is advertise them and market them to get people to want to breed their mares to our stallions. It's obviously a really competitive market here in Kentucky. And so coming up with good, you know, facts and statistics and selling points about our stallions, about their progeny on the racetrack and in the sales ring, when they first retired to stud, about their own race record, their own pedigree, comparing our stallions to other stallions that they raced against or other stallions in their price range at stud, as well as comparing them historically to, you know, for instance, example would be Nyquist, who's one of our freshman sires who has his first 2-year-olds running this year. He's already got 2 grade 1 winners, which is really exciting. And he's the first freshman sire since Danzig in 1984 to already have 2 grade 1 winners before the end of September. So it's coming up with fun facts like that and doing research and coming up with statistics that we can use about our stallions to want to entice people to breed to our stallions instead of, you know, all the stallions at other farms. So it's just kind of a lot of comparison advertising, but trying to make our stallions stand out as much as we can. So that's kind of the main thing that I do. And then like Anise said, in the past couple of years, I've tried to teach myself a little bit more about computer science and coding, which has helped a lot in my job. So taught myself how to write SQL queries, and because, you know, it's obviously there's tremendous amounts of data in this industry, you know, race results and sales results and pedigrees, and there's like so much data. So being able to communicate with the computer and get a handle on the data in order to quickly do research and get answers to questions that if you're trying to do it by hand would take hours and hours and hours. So, but yeah, I love it. I really enjoy it. And then I also, as well as Katie, we're both involved with the horse country program as well, which does tours on the farm. So I manage the tourism program at Donnabelle and give a lot of tours there. And Katie does the same thing at Blackwood. We're both really involved with that as well. But it's so fun.
So before we jump over to Erin, I'm just going to emphasize, as you know, our viewers will see as we go along, there are a lot of different educational pathways and skills that you'll see that you can have in the thoroughbred industry. So these 4 panelists that we have tonight all went to different educational or university programs that were specifically pertaining to, you know, the horse racing industry and the breeding side of the industry as well. But as Brianne just emphasized, you know, if you go to school for something like computer science or you're really good at something like coding, that doesn't mean that there's not a place for you in the thoroughbred industry, because there are all of these different applied skills that you can have along the way. It's important to have very good people skills. Communication is very, very important, and even knowing different languages. And so with that, I'm going to introduce you guys to Aaron West. And I've known Aaron for a long time as he's gone through his educational journey in the thoroughbred industry. And I also have to congratulate him because there's this amazing awards program in the thoroughbred industry called the Thoroughbred Industry Employee Awards. And so this program is specifically for individuals who work in the horse racing industry who, you know, it's long hours working with horses. They require care every single day. It really is an industry that requires a lot of dedication and time. And, you know, sometimes you're putting in that time and going unnoticed for it. But Aaron is a finalist for the TIEA Newcomer Award, which is for someone who's been in the industry for 5 years or less. So congratulations on that, Aaron, and good luck with the final interview process and everything. But tell us about what your job is that you're doing right now and what that role entails.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's an honor to be considered for one of those awards. So currently, I am the racing operations manager at Bradley Thoroughbreds, and at Bradley Thoroughbreds, we're kind of what we call a full-service bloodstock agency. So we do a little bit of everything. My particular job is to oversee our racehorses. We put together partnerships, whether they be a group of horses on a yearly racing venture that runs anywhere from 4 to 6 fillies, or single horse racing ventures, like She's a Julie is probably our biggest horse right now. She's a multiple grade 1 winner. So I kind of oversee all of those racing ventures in terms of making sure that we have all of our licenses in order to be able to run, to make sure owners are updated on their horses weekly. I work in conjunction with my boss, Peter Bradley, who owns the business, kind of just in managing the horses' careers. That's kind of like my primary first job role, I guess you could say. From there, when it comes to race day, I make sure we've got all of our tickets and our seats, kind of do all the client concierge type things. I also oversee our social media, our website management, and then like just recently wrapping up the Keeneland September sale, I'm out on the sales ground every day shortlisting horses and looking at yearlings, and then just kind of any other little things that come along. We're a small office, so you've got to always be willing to pick up the slack and do whatever's kind of needed to keep things running smoothly.
Awesome. So as everyone can see, there's, you know, a really wide array of diversity in this group. We have those who are working a lot with people. You know, Katie really has to be very dynamic on the people side of things, working with clients. Brianne is going to work a lot with data and marketing and promotion. Alex is doing a lot specifically with, you know, the races, with Breeders' Cup, working with, you know, international people. And then we have Aaron, who's going to be more like your, you know, sports manager, you know, like the horses are like athletes on a sports team. And so even they require managing and working with some of the people on the periphery of that as well. So then going back through our panel, Katie, if you could tell us about, you know, the educational programs that you went through, because you had a kind of an international experience as you were getting involved in the industry, because I understand you did the Irish National Stud program. So tell us about that and how you decided to do that program and what you came away with from it.
So the Irish National Stud program is based out of Kildare in Ireland, and it's actually a farm there that is owned by the Irish government, and they stand stallions and they have brood mares for themselves and for clients. So every year they hold a 6-month kind of thoroughbred breeding industry course, and they take students in, and you basically help run the farm in addition to getting, lectures every evening and going on field trips and going to races and stuff like that. So for me, it just appealed to me because I, was craving an opportunity to kind of go abroad and just kind of open more doors outside of the United States. It was really cool because there were 22 students, and I think there were 9 different countries represented, including, there was a student from Japan, South Korea, Australia, France, and those are still contacts that I have to this day. You could travel almost anywhere around the world, and I have, friends that I went through that course with that are now, contacts and allies of mine. And it was cool there were obviously managers and foremans there that worked for the stud all year round, but we filled in all the gaps. We, literally had the opportunity to keep a farm running throughout the entire breeding season. And we got to work hands-on with some stallions, which you don't really get to do a whole lot. So that was a pretty amazing experience.
And so was it something that you picked up when you were going through that program that led you to your current career, where you kind of had that aha moment of, this is what I want to do? Mm-hmm. Or, tell us about your pathway from there in navigating different jobs in the industry.
I feel like when I kind of embarked upon, my journey in the thoroughbred industry, it took me a long time to kind of decide exactly what I wanted. So instead of, kind of getting involved I went to the University of Kentucky Equine Science and Management program, instead of knowing that I wanted to be a trainer or a farm manager, I kind of decided to try a bunch of different things, tried to keep, while jumping from, a lot of different areas in the industry, kept some, common ties with farms and trainers and whatnot. But, my first 5, 6, 7 years out of college was just trying to gain as much different experiences as possible. And along the way, I spent, 3 years breaking yearlings at Juddmonte Farm, and that had, the training side has always been something that has engaged me. So, when I fell into my job at Blackwood 3 years ago, it was kind of the perfect sum of everything I had learned, through my education and work experience to have the job that I have now.
Right. And as you guys are going to hear too later on, when Brienne talks about her experiences, the thoroughbred industry is so international, as is a lot of the equine industry. I mean, horses bring people together worldwide, but you can go to a lot of different countries and find thoroughbred racing. And so it does offer a lot of travel opportunities for maybe a young person who's looking to go abroad and work in Ireland or the UK, France, Australia, Japan, South American countries have racing as well. So there are just such a wide array of, diverse opportunities out there. And so Alex, you are from New York. And so what prompted you to go to the University of Arizona racetrack industry program? Because that's a long ways to travel.
So it's funny, and I was just thinking about it. So even going to Arizona, I mean, I can look back now and say how much of it really changed my life. But I remember I had done a 4-year degree up in Rochester. I did a marketing degree. And as I was finishing up, I knew I wanted to get into racing, really didn't know how to do that because as most people see, and as we've discussed, there's a lot of barriers that you see that once you kind of go for it, you see they're not really there. But when you're on the outside looking in, it's intimidating. And I was fortunate to meet a couple people. I did a trip down to Florida with the one person I knew in the racing industry that I met down there, met a couple other people. It was actually Pete Aiello, who's the track announcer at Gulfstream, who told me about the racetrack program. And I did a visit out there. I did a visit on I had a project due on Wednesday that I had to present for. So I flew out from New York on Monday, met with them, met with the group, met with my professor who I ended up having, flew back Tuesday and was there for Wednesday. It was worth it. And I looked back at that day, I was trying to decide, do I want to go move my entire life across the country for something that I really didn't know how it would go? And I remember my dad just saying to me, you'll always wonder what would have been if you don't go. And he was spot on. It really is the best decision I made.
And so how many students were in your class, and how would that program be different from, you know, another more general equine program at another school, you know, focusing on the racetrack industry? What did some of your coursework entail?
So the racetrack industry program it takes a lot of lessons that you learn in a normal degree and can turn them into racing. I mean, did racetrack marketing, racetrack management. We did a lot of the equine side. I mean, we had classes at our farm, which was brand new, actually. We had just received probably one or 2 years into my time. But it was just a variation of everything you do in the racing industry. I mean, we did a whole class on learning how to work in a racing office, and I ended up working in a racing office down at Colonial not long ago, and it was a lot of what we learned. It was weird to look at some of the lessons we had. I mean, being a marketing major and then going to a school where I'm, all right, take everything you learned and now here's how it works into how a racetrack would do it, or how a racing organization would do it. And there's so many similarities, but at the same time, it's stuff you don't think about until you're actually into that spot.
Right. And then, so you went from graduating that program straight into the Kentucky Equine Management internship, and Brianne will have some things to add about this as well. But, you know, something that a lot of industry professionals recommend is gaining experience through internships. And I guess that's across industries, whether you're in horses or in other industries. You know, gaining internships are a really valuable way of gaining experience for a set amount of time. So tell us what KEME is like, and, you know, how that also had an academic component to it.
So growing up, I was somebody who pretty much got into the game as a fan and through a family of people who like to bet. That's how I grew up. Spending 5 months on a breeding farm was a huge learning curve. It was, looking back, and even when I was there, it was an amazing experience. And I was fortunate to work at Stone Farm for the Hancocks. They've bred many amazing horses. I mean, Derby winners and some top stallions here in Japan, Sunday Silence. I mean, but it was a major learning curve for me. And as I got going, like, it was better and better. It's something that I would recommend to anybody who gets into the industry. And it's the first thing you learn once you really once you get into it, you realize how many avenues of the industry there really are. I mean, there's so many different places where people work in that all come together within the horse racing industry and breeding farm, or just in general, whether you're with the yearling crew, you're with the brood mares, whether you're working on track, being hands-on with horses is a huge part of this industry that there are a lot of people that do it, and there's a lot that have never experienced it. And I was one of the ones that had never experienced it. So it was something that I would definitely do again if I had the chance. But for the 5 months, it was a perfect spot.
There's a lot to be said for gaining the hands-on horsemanship skills, because even if you're going to go into a position that's more office-based and isn't hands-on, then you still have that experience that can be applied, right? I can totally, like, oh my gosh, working on a breeding farm is so different from, you know, working at the racetrack or working in media. And even though there's a lot of crossover, like, I remember my first time handling mares and foals was like, wow, this is wild, but it's such a great experience, you know, as you're trying to wrangle these babies that are bouncing all over, and but it's just, it can't be replicated, and it's so much fun. So Brianne, sorry, go ahead.
Just one thing to add, and it's a big thing, especially with what I'm doing now. It's like, now I'm not working as much hands-on, but to be able to understand the different parts of the industry. You deal with people who are doing exactly what you did now. So when they have issues, something comes up that they're dealing with, on the business side of things, you can understand it.
Totally, totally. And that's where just gaining experience, you know, and that goes back to the value of doing internships. You know, you might find out what you don't like doing rather than what you do like doing, but then you still have that experience to guide you on in the future. So Brianne, what led you to decide to do the Kentucky Equine Management internship program and then eventually apply for Godolphin Flying Start? And if you could explain what GFS is as well.
Sure, yeah. So I got into racing completely as a fan. I did not grow up around horses at all, but I just got into it from watching on TV. So like when Funny Side and Smarty Jones were going for the Triple Crown, I just happened to come across it on TV and became a huge fan and just was obsessed with horse racing. But like you said, Anise, earlier, like at the time, I hadn't even considered a career because I thought the only thing that you could do is be a trainer or a jockey. And
Yeah.
I wasn't going to do either of that. I had no hands-on horse experience, so that wasn't going to work. So I was just thinking I was going to be a fan for the rest of my life. And then came to Kentucky one year to meet Smarty Jones at Three Chimneys, and just like was like in awe of Lexington and all the horse farms and the industry in Lexington. And that was when I realized that there are other jobs, like we went to brought my parents, we went to all the stallion farms, and I think just seeing all the jobs that, you know, in the office at the farms or at Keeneland, or like that's when at first like the light bulb went off in my head that there are like so many career opportunities in this industry. And that's when I said, okay, I was going to go to medical school, and I was like, forget that. I'm moving to Kentucky. I'm going to work in the horse industry. So immediately changed my major, and the rest is history. But yeah, so I started taking horse classes at the University of Arkansas, which is where I'm from. I did an economics degree and did a minor in equine science there. And that was my first really hands-on horse experience, took some classes, and got some kind of basic hands-on horse experience. And then I'd actually found out about the KIMI program on that first trip to Kentucky at Three Chimneys. I picked up a brochure for the KIMI program and started reading it and was like, well, this sounds amazing. So right after college, applied for the KIMI program and moved here to Lexington. I did the fall session at Lane's End, so prepping yearlings for the sales and working the yearling sales, which was an amazing experience. And I learned so much. And I think like just you learn so much from the people that you work with, because I came in, I was green, you know, like I hadn't touched a horse until 2 years before that. And even then it was just, you know, at school, I never touched a thoroughbred before. So coming in, not knowing very much, but then you're working with all these people on the farm that are so experienced, and there are people there from all over the world. And I learned so much from just watching them and learning from them and asking questions. So that was an awesome experience. And then I did the spring session at Margot Farm. I worked mainly in the office. They needed some office help, so I did office work for them, did a little bit of helping plan matings, and they had 4 stallions at the time there, so I helped a little bit with selling seasons to their 4 stallions. That was kind of my first introduction to the stallion side of the business and marketing stallions, and I really enjoyed it. And I also was able to work in the breeding shed, and we lived on the farm, so I was able to go to most of the foalings as well. So got kind of the hands-on of the breeding season and the office experience too, so that was amazing. And then after that, went on and did the Flying Start program. So I'd found out about the Flying Start at some point during college, I think, and just, you know, read about it and decided that it sounded like an amazing opportunity, and I definitely wanted to try and do it. So the Flying Start, it's a 2-year program that is sponsored by Godolphin, which is the company that I work for now. But so Sheikh Mohammed, who's the founder of Godolphin, founded Flying Start in 2003, and kind of as a way to bring in young people into the industry and give them just kind of a good all-around education on all aspects of the industry. So they take 12 people each year from around the world, and then you spend, it's a 2-year program, so you spend time in Ireland, England, Kentucky, Australia, and Dubai over the 2 years, and just do a little bit of everything. So there's, you know, it's usually mornings are hands-on working with horses on a farm or in a racing stable, and then afternoons you either have a lecture from someone in the industry or a visit to another operation in the industry, or more of an academic, you know, academic coursework to do. But it's a really great kind of all-encompassing learn. Like, you're not going to come out being an expert in every aspect of the industry. That's not the goal, but it's just that you have a little bit of basic knowledge on a lot of different things. And so it was an amazing program. And then probably the best part of it, kind of like what Katie said, is the contacts that you make, like the friends that you make with the other 12 people or other 11 people in your group, as well as the people that have graduated before and after you. So it's definitely, you make a lot of contacts and great networking. And I think for me with the Flying Start, like I probably learned just as much from the other 11 people in my class as from the program itself, because everybody comes from all over the world. So we had 3 from Australia, South African, English, 2 from Ireland, 3 from America, 1 from Canada. So, and every year it's different. But kind of like what Katie said with the Irish National Stud as well, is it's kind of a melting pot of people from all over the world with very different backgrounds in the industry, different experience. Some people that have worked at the racetrack, some people that have worked at breeding farms, some people that had, all different things and had different interests and different areas of expertise. So just sitting down and talking to each other and asking each other questions, you learn, so much just from that. So it was awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing how much in this industry too, you can learn so much from your peers in general, and so I experienced the same thing on Flying Start, but all of my different friends that I have in the thoroughbred industry that, we might work in different sectors, and I'm always learning new things from them. So it's really cool. You never get bored, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And so, Erin, I understand you came from a totally different industry, didn't you, before you considered horse racing? And so what sparked your interest in the thoroughbred industry? And then you went on to go to the North American Racing Academy with the Bluegrass Community and Technical College. Tell us about that journey and what kind of spurred you on.
Yeah, so my experience, I guess you could kind of combine a little bit of Alex and a little bit of Brianne. I likewise am also from Arkansas. I have 0, yeah. I thought I saw an Arkansas thing in the background, and I was like, is she from Arkansas?
I forgot about that. I should have made that connection right away.
Yeah, so it's funny when you said that. But anyway, so I likewise came from 0 horse background. As a general sports fan, had watched the Derby and the Triple Crown on TV and things like that. But I played soccer in college and got recruited to go to a small school about 45 minutes from Oakland Park. Started going to the races just with some friends, just on Saturday afternoons, just for something to do. And I guess kind of similar to Alex, found out I like to bet on horses a little bit. That was fun. And so I, kind of started following the sport from there. My family had actually gone to the races some before everybody started getting married and having kids and everything else. So they enjoyed coming, and, I was away in college, but it was kind of like a place that we could meet and hang out for the day and watch the races and stuff. Kind of also similar to Brianne, I guess, to me, all horse racing was what I saw at Oakland Park and the Derby. It was probably when Curlin came through Oakland Park was the first time I realized they run for a while after Oakland and go do other things. And that was the first time I ever watched the Breeders' Cup, and things like that. And it's just kind of what kind of continued to pique my interest. I graduated from college in 2008. And I worked for about 6.5 years in the nonprofit sector, just back home, just in a couple different companies. All the while was spending all my free time still going to the races, came to the Derby once. But I came to Kentucky and got to go to some farms for the first time. And that's when I really was like, oh my gosh, this is like a whole thing. This is just so much bigger than I ever realized. And so that was kind of when my interest started being I wonder if there's some way I could do something with this, because I like my job. I love what I'm doing and helping people and things like that. But I think I like horse racing more, which in my head kind of sounded a bit bad. It's you would rather work with horses than people. And it's I don't know, maybe, I don't know. But so I kind of started researching programs. The racetrack industry program was the first thing I came across. I kind of looked into that for about a year, but trying to go back to a 4-year school, and I'd gone to it, and it was kind of like a technical thing too. I'd gone to a private school for college, so a lot of my classes and coursework wouldn't transfer. So I'd kind of be starting all over with an out-of-state 4-year degree. And I was that just is really tough. And I found the Racing Academy, just through the Google machine, more or less. And at first, a lot of it was originally started as just a jockey school, which I'm never going to be a jockey. But the more I looked into it, I kind of started seeing that they had started a horseman's, what they were calling at the time, the horseman's pathway program, which is for people that want to do something in the industry but not ride horses. So I kind of looked into that, and then in let's see, it was 2014, I think at this point, 2014 April, because it was the Keeneland Spring Meet. We went to the races. So I came up here, I met with Dixie Kendall, who's the program coordinator. I met with Chris McCarron, who was still at the school at the time, and Remy Balak as well. And basically they showed me around, kind of showed me what, the courses were like, where you would do all of your educational programs and be in the barn, and you're out at the training center. And that afternoon I signed up for classes for the fall. And I quit my job about a month later, and just kind of moved blind to Kentucky, having never handled a horse in my life. So I started the program then in the fall of 2014. I started working for Katie's mom and dad in January of the following year, kind of part-time on the weekends, which was my first job, kind of working with horses, which was a lot of fun. But the NARA program was, incredible for me, because a lot of people maybe have the ability to just, if you've got some sort of handling background, you could probably just go to any track and start hot walking. You could probably do that. And if you've just got the work ethic, you can move along. I had no idea how to muck out a stall, let alone put a halter on a horse or handle a 3-year-old fit racehorse. I'm a little bit probably quieter and a little more shy in new environments. So the racing academy being like, okay, day 1, here's how we muck out a stall. Day 2, here's how you lead horses. Day 3, here's how you groom them. Like that kind of step-by-step environment. I thrived in that environment, because it was just an environment that set you up that if you would put in the work and the time, you would be ready to go straight into the workforce when you were done. So I did that program for 2 years, did a couple of other, like with my coursework, I kind of did, part-time jobs along the way at different farms, hot walked a little bit. And then when I finished up, at the time, the Racing Academy was doing they were associated with the International Federation of Horse Racing Academies, which was an internship opportunity that was based out of Abu Dhabi. So like a smaller version, I get a much, much smaller version than the Flying Start, but I got to go, I was nominated and won the chance to go to Ireland for 2 months. So I lived in Kildare. I spent a couple of weeks at Kildangan, which is Darley's farm in Ireland. Then I did 4 weeks of the Irish National Stud course, basically just as Katie talked about earlier, just basically as if I was a member of that course for about a month. And then I did my last week at the Gore's Bridge Breeze Up sale, which was kind of, I'd worked a yearling sale over here, but that was my first time ever seeing a 2-year-old sale where they actually breeze the horses up. So I got to do that with BBA Ireland for kind of last week. I did some of the clocking and going around and looking at horses with McDonough. And then when I came back, I started working full time. I started at Lane's End and I worked there for a little over 2 years before I changed my job now at Bradley Thoroughbreds.
I think it's awesome that, a lot of you guys touched on the fact that you hadn't had a horse background or grown up with horses, because I think that's a big intimidation factor for people who are thinking about, oh, it'd be really cool to have a job in the thoroughbred industry, but I have no background with horses. Well, it doesn't matter, because there are programs out there that will bring you up step by step and teach you all of the aspects in, horse handling safety, and these different components that you need to know. And then on the other hand, when it comes to traveling abroad, like as you guys can see from this group, there's no one way to be able to go about doing these things. If you want to travel, if you want to enter some kind of educational program to learn more, there's no one single path that is the right path. It's, this huge, amazing variety of paths. And a lot of times you go off the path and wind around a bit and find your way eventually. But it's really cool. And that's part of the adventure of it. And so now for people who are maybe like, well, you know, I'm kind of considering this, what is your guys' best advice for a newcomer who wants to get into the sport? Whether that's a particular resource, like a book they should read, or a particular skill they should learn, or just some general life advice. Let's bring out the wisdom here. Katie?
Oh, me?
Back to our order, sorry.
Oh gosh, I think the best advice that I actually got, and I'd kind of finished my college work at the time, is, you know, I think, and no matter what career you're going towards in school, people really hammer into your head the importance of contacts in general. I feel like people really encouraged me to meet, you know, already established professionals that had kind of made it in the industry when I was younger. But it wasn't until I applied for a job with some bloodstock agents when I left track, you know, about 6 years ago, that he told me, he was like, you know, it's important to know those established professionals, but it's equally as important to establish a group of peers with common interests. So I think no matter where, no matter where you are, even if you're not, you know, we're obviously lucky here in community here, but you know,
I think it cut out there for, I can't hear you. Can you just repeat that last little part? There, way better.
No, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, now I've lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry. Establishing your peer. We're very lucky.
Oh, yes.
Kentucky, establishing your peer group.
Yes, so it's obviously easy in a place like Kentucky. We're surrounded by people that love horses, no matter what sport of horse equestrianism it is. But I think, you know, programs like social media, Amplify, there's tons of programs out there, even if you don't live in, you know, horse-centric areas, that help kind of bring that community closer together. So I think you got to establish your community one way or
That's awesome. Great advice. Alex?
So I'll use something that I learned, or that I was told when I was at the racetrack program. It was something that I've really held on to since I have left, and even when I was there. And it was in regards to the racetrack program, but it really fits in just about anything you're doing. You will get out of it what you put into it. And that pretty much, in our standing, was, I mean, you can go through and you can do things, and just, if you put in some effort, you'll do okay. But if you really have the will to succeed and push forward, that's what a lot of these programs do, is they open those doors and they say, here you go. Here's kind of the guide of where you can go. Now you go. And if you can push forward, if you can really put yourself out there and say, I want to do this, and it really will make a difference. I mean, I'll use one example that I've done, and it's nothing that I intended to do, but I love to visit racetracks. It was something I did well before I even started at the racetrack program. It was really, when I wasn't in the industry, it was my connection to the industry. I grew up in Saratoga, which is racing. It's a racing summer every summer, but I started to visit tracks outside of New York, outside of the meccas of racing, to small tracks. And once I got into the racing program, I'd have to make these long drives from Tucson to New York to go back home, and I would draw it up. So I would visit about 7 racetracks on the way, and I would reach out to people that I had met in the program, people that I knew from the program that knew somebody who worked at that racetrack. I would email them, contact them some way, said, I'm going to come by. Would you be willing to chat for a little bit? It was incredible the way they treat you when you show a common interest into the industry, and you're willing to put yourself out there and say, I'm here, to talk with them, and it really shows something. They treated me so well, and they're still some of my best friends, the people that I've met. So that really is something that, if you're willing to do it, will make a huge difference.
That's really cool. Yeah, you had a heck of a tour around the country there. So let me know when you want to go to the North Dakota Horse Park. I'll give you your tour at one of our North Dakota racetracks.
That will happen. Don't you worry.
Oh yeah, one of the best places. Brianne, how about for you?
Yeah. So when people ask me this, my advice is really nerdy, but it's always to read a lot. So obviously, if you're just like starting to get into the thoroughbred industry or just starting to get interested in it, obviously watching racing and then reading the news, read the Thoroughbred Daily News every day, read the Blood Horse, just get starting to know the lingo of the industry. And you don't have to read every word of these publications, but at least scan through, read the headlines, and just start to figure out what you might be interested in. But keep up with the news, keep up with the race results, keep up with the pedigrees of the horses that are winning. The more you read, the more you it all starts to click and things start to, make sense and kind of come together. Best book to read, because you asked, Horse Trader, obviously. So Horse Trader is just an awesome book about like the kind of the history of the industry. And if that doesn't get you excited about racing, nothing will. It's such an awesome book. So that's always the book that I kind of recommend people to read first. I'm super nerdy, but yeah, so reading. And then second would be, like everybody else has kind of said, is starting off, you've got to have the hands-on experience. You have to have the hands-on, experience working with horses and with thoroughbreds. Even if your ultimate goal is to work in an office setting or to, do something on the business side of the industry, you still, like Aaron said, you've got to learn how to muck the stall. You've got to learn how to start with the basics, work on a farm or work at the racetrack, but get that hands-on experience with horses. You can't ever, be someone's boss or be in an office and not have done that stuff, because people aren't going to respect you as much. So you have to have done everything from the ground up. So get that hands-on experience with horses. There's a plethora of different ways to get into doing that, as we've talked about. And then also, like, my kind of one regret that I didn't do is I never really worked at the racetrack, except for a short period during the Flying Start program, but just for a few weeks. But so that's the one thing that I kind of wish, if I could go back and there's one more thing that I could sort of add to my resume, or one more thing that I could have done, I wish that I would have at least walk hots at a track for a summer or something like that. But just to see the final product at the racetrack, that's what we're all trying to achieve, right? That's what we're all trying to breed and create, is the racehorse. So that's kind of one thing that I always recommend to people, that if you're young enough and you've got a chance, kind of probably too late for me now, maybe not, but like, that's the one thing that I wish I had done. Something like maybe go work at the racetrack for a couple months or something and just kind of get that experience.
Never too old to gain.
Can I? Okay, awesome. I got a job. Okay.
Yeah. Anybody of any age, you're never too old to make a career, learn something new, make sure that you're nimble if you're going to be working with racehorses, but
For sure.
That's great advice. A variety of advice. Horse Trader, everybody go out and read it. Very good book. Aaron?
Kind of, I guess, adding on a little bit to what Brianne said, I think, when I look back at, how did I end up where I am? Well, I think the one thing I did was I took every chance for every new experience I could get. If, when I came back from Ireland and I took my first job, I thought the last thing I want to do is go groom yearlings at a farm when it's 95 degrees and 100% humidity outside in a Kentucky summer. And I joke all the time that if I could keep my current job and go walk yearlings every morning, I'd go back and do it in a heartbeat, because I just absolutely loved it. And it was something I didn't think I would enjoy at all. And I loved my time at Lane's End. But while I was at Lane's End, the seasons kind of rotate. You've got yearling prep season through the summer into the early fall, and then it transitions into the breeding season. And so while I was at Lane's End, I rotated. I never just stayed in one division, because I just thought, I need as much experience as possible, because I have nothing. And so, I went from the yearlings, I did a breeding season doing mares and foals. It required me to stay at a friend's house so that I could, who's now my fiance actually, but so that I could be at foalings in the middle of the night, because I lived too far away from the farm. But I knew, I want to do foalings. I'd had a little bit of experience with it when I was in Ireland at the National Stud, but by doing that, I got to go to, I think, about 30 or 31 foalings. When I was on yearlings, I always did turnout. That meant going back to the farm at 7 o'clock to turn horses back out and muck out a few stalls. It was just another thing just to keep doing things to have experiences, because a yearling at turnout might be a different yearling than you bring in when they've been running around all night, And then I went back to yearlings, and then I had a chance to work on the stallion side of things at Lane's End, and I did the next breeding season over on the stallion side, which was a great new experience. It wasn't necessarily for me, but it was also just a cool experience because when you're working in a stallion shed at Lane's End, I mean, you're getting to see some of the best stallions and best horses every day, and that never gets old. I mean, it never got old walking into a barn and, you know, there's Candy Ride and there's, you know, Quality Road. And I mean, like, as again, growing up a fan or coming up a fan, getting to see you know, handle those horses every day just never gets old. But, you know, I think that was for me kind of just what I would say is just, you can never have too many experiences, you know, don't, you know, yeah, you can't, you know, maybe you can't do everything, but that was the one thing I think for me was I tried to take every opportunity I could because I knew I didn't have a lifetime of experience to fall back on. You know, I had to, you know, try to work harder, you know, and learn as much as I could and ask as many questions as I could, you know, and if it meant staying late to have that come out and check a horse, or, you know, like I said, doing foalings or doing short shifts where you stay until night watch shows up, you know, just because you never know what could happen in those 2 hours. That might be a new experience for you. And I tried to take as many of those, you know, kind of opportunities as I could. And I think, you know, just ingraining that hard work and attention to detail and all of those things has helped get me to the point where I am now.
Right. And I think what's been reflected in all of our speakers tonight and what I said earlier, you know, there's no way around it, whether you're working with horses or in the thoroughbred industry. It is a lot of work because horses don't take breaks. They are animals. They have a mind of their own. They do get hurt at times. And so you have to have that next level, you know, work ethic and dedication and always putting in, you know, you are going to get out what you put into it, and it's going to take a lot of long hours, hands-on horsemanship experience, a lot of reading, but you will get there. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nicole. Did we have any other questions?
Yes, and I just have to say I should have left my video on because as I'm listening to all your stories, they're so relatable, and I was like clapping along and just laughing. So I get it. I've been there. Yeah, it's amazing. So thank you for sharing your stories. I also just wanted to piggyback off what Erin and then Katie, I think, said earlier. Katie, you said that certain things you were doing, it became the perfect sum of everything you learned. I think that is really important because like Erin said, I mean, not to harp on my career, but when I was at Monmouth Park, my very first day there, I was stuffing envelopes for a promotion of some kind. And I'm sitting there thinking, I have 2 degrees and I'm sitting here putting papers in envelopes. And I'm like, I can't believe I'm doing this. And every little task that I did, it made me not only a better at my job, but frankly, a better person. And it came back in the end and it got me to where I am today. So I have to say, you know, you might be stuffing envelopes, you might be taking out the garbage the next day, but it's going to come back around, like I promise you. Questions? Yes. So for someone who might not be a racing fan, but let's say they already are involved with horses and, you know, have that appreciation for them, how do you spark that love or appreciation for the sport of horse racing?
That is a really good question. Do we want to go in speaker order, or do you guys want to, do we have a volunteer to jump in?
I might need you to repeat the question because my thing cut out right as it was going.
Yes. So for someone who already likes horses and, you know, has that love there, but not necessarily appreciates horse racing, how would you spark that appreciation for the sport? For example, like at Monmouth Park, they used to take random fans into the paddock and kind of have that, you know, up close and personal experience. So what would you guys recommend?
So I can say one thing that we did. So when I was down in Tucson, I worked at one of the smallest racetracks you're going to find, Rito Park, which I'm sure Nicole's familiar with.
It's amazing.
It is. It's the smallest track. They're not running for much money, but the people absolutely love it there. So one thing I tried to do just for getting people involved. So during the feature race every day, we would do a riders up. So we would put like a young kid on camera bring them into the paddock and introduce them, and just have them yell riders up throughout the building. And it was something that, it's that experience when, again, either when you're young or when you're older, just that experience at the racetrack is really one of the big selling points. And I had a few kids that were so excited to say it. Some were extremely nervous and didn't want to say it until they had to. But it's those experiences, it's getting to the racetrack and being there, being around that atmosphere that really helps drum up the racing, the interest in racing, and you get to feel really what it's all about.
I think there's something to be said too, you know, you really touched on with kids, getting kids involved, because I feel like when you're a kid, if you go to a track or have that experience with horses, if something makes you feel really, really special, you develop an attachment to it. So my interest in racing was piqued when I saw the movie Ruffian when I was around 12 years old, which is about this famous racehorse, and I lived really close by another very, very tiny track. And the general manager at the time saw that I had taken an interest and said, well, why don't you come and you can be our volunteer racehorse ambassador. So they have this off the track thoroughbred that they use as the track mascot. And so I would stand by his little pen. His name was Barracuda Boy. And as people would come in, they could pet Barracuda Boy. And I'd be like, let me tell you about Barracuda Boy's pedigree and racing career and the jockeys who rode him. And I didn't know diddly squat at the time, but she gave me the information to read and facilitated the learning experience, and then, you know, making it really fun and making me feel special, like I had an important job to do. And that really sticks with people.
I think we kind of forget about that too, being in the industry now for a certain amount of time, how magical horses are, and, you know, things that we kind of took for granted. Like I remember when I would stand at the finish line of the racetrack and watch the races, and you could feel the ground shift a little when they came by the finish line. And it's just like, if everybody could just get a little taste of that, I think it would be really impactful.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Any other good tips here? Not to put you guys on the spot.
Well, I think just kind of continuing on with what Alex and Anise have said, like one great way obviously is horse country. So getting people onto the farms and you know, giving them sort of a behind the scenes experience. So horse country is a sort of a coalition of 30 or so you know, thoroughbred industry businesses in Kentucky. So breeding farms, racing stable in Blackwood, Keeneland, the 2 vet clinics, Haggard's and Bruden Riddle, Holloway Feeds. So it's not just farms, but a lot of different thoroughbred industry entities, and they give tours and allow people to come in and kind of get a behind the scenes experience. And whether it's meeting, you know, Kentucky Derby winning stallions, or whether it's seeing young foals and feeding them, you know, feeding carrots to their moms, or whether it's learning about how horses are trained at Blackwood or at Keeneland. Just kind of giving them that behind the scenes experience that they can't really get anywhere else, I think is really special, and has gone a long way in converting people from just, you know, people that are maybe sort of interested in horses to becoming fans of the thoroughbred industry. And it's been really successful. So that's one way. And then also kind of like what Alex said, just getting them at the track. Like I'd say just if you know, take somebody on the backside at Saratoga during the meet in the morning, or you take somebody the backside of Churchill Downs during Derby week, like just giving them that, like that's the experience where you're just like, the atmosphere is like, you can cut it with a knife. It's so like, it's incredible. And it's, you know, like that's what gets people excited. So like taking somebody to the racetrack in the morning and watch horses train, I think is another really cool way to get people excited.
And I think
Go ahead, Anise.
I was just going to add one last little tidbit that pops out to me is the history of racing and how old of a sport it is, and how interwoven it is in a lot of societies throughout the world, that it really is one of the oldest sports in the world. And when you go back in time and you start, you know, looking at the different pedigrees and how racing became popular and the way it would gather communities together, and, you know, how many racetracks have disappeared over time. But then when you find out, oh, wow, there were actually like 5 racetracks in this city rather than 1, it just kind of hits you in a way, and you realize how much this sport has been ingrained in society.
And kind of on that note too, and horse country, I think, does a very good job of addressing this, is the sport does seem very, it's a sport of kings. You don't think that an everyday average person can somehow get involved. I remember when I was on a horse country tour, they brought out Warfront at Claiborne and they just invited people to come pet him. And I'm like, what? Like this horse is worth so much money. And he was like a puppy dog. And I'm like, I feel like it really, you're able to bond with these people. And the stallion manager was so down to earth. And I commend, horse country on that. And they're working with Equitana as well. So hopefully next year we'll have a lot of tours during Equitana week too. Last question before I let you guys go. For anyone who's looking for a mentor, just kind of that, leg up in the industry. Anise, I know Amplify is working on a mentorship program, but what would you recommend for these people?
Should I kick it off?
Sure.
Never be afraid to send an email reaching out to someone asking questions. And I know that can seem really vague and really broad, but people are so welcoming of wanting to help newcomers. And I always do the best I can. Like I said, Amplify is working on a more formalized mentorship program, but even informally, when people reach out and say, hey, I know nothing, or I know this much, or I'm interested in this area, trying to connect them over email to someone who they can speak with and ask questions to, because people are so receptive to teaching and bringing new people into the industry, because we've all experienced this similar roundabout journey, kind of stumbling your way through and learning how to handle horses. And so people can relate to a new person who wants to come in and they really do want to help them. So it can be as simple as sending an email and saying, dear so-and-so, my name is so-and-so, and I have a passion to learn about the thoroughbred industry. And people are really receptive to that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Ironically, with Katie being on this, I don't know if she remembers this, but like when I can't remember when exactly it was, but I was either getting close to finishing up the NARA program, and we'd had some we knew each other from me working at the farm, but I don't remember what we did. We went to dinner or something, and I just kind of picked your brain about where to go from here, what to do as far as jobs, my career, just because at that point, I'd gone through the school program, but as far as work experience and stuff, I still to myself felt very green. And, I knew that, she was working for some bloodstock agents at the time, and just I kind of thought that's a little bit the direction I wanted to go in the long run, which is kind of the direction I am in now. But just kind of talking to her, and she was more than willing to meet up and have conversations and stuff like that. So I definitely agree with what you're saying, Anise, in terms of just not being afraid, to reach out to people, because it's interesting. The more I've been around it, is in some way, when you're working for different things, we could have a horse in a race, but then Godolphin could also have a horse in a race. So in theory, me and Brianne are kind of competing against each other. But at the same time, my horse, for example, on Friday, I've got one that's going to run on Friday at Keeneland. She's by Street Sense. Street Sense stands at Darling. So it's we in some ways it's competition, but we all need each other. Everybody needs each other. And I think that's why there is a willingness to, be helpful. When people ask me for advice, I had a NARA student shadow me the entire Keeneland sale, because those are opportunities that I know not that long ago I was desperate for, and I was emailing and trying to talk to people to get those chances. So just kind of piggybacking on what you're saying, that is definitely, and you can't email too many people, email as many people as you can, and in different areas too, I think.
And then sometimes you get a really great mentor like Brianne Sharp, who, I still have actually some of the PDFs that you emailed me. I would email and ask you for reading materials, and you send me book suggestions and article PDFs. And so it takes people like that who want to engage you even more. So well done.
Exactly. And we've all been there. We've all been one of those young adults who wanted to be in the industry and had that passion. So if you're thinking about sending an email, you're not crazy. Do it. We've all done it. And, we've gotten to where we are today. So I can't thank you enough for putting this together. Anise, Equitana USA is thrilled to be working with Amplify, and we are very much hoping to have you guys on site next year at the Kentucky Horse Park, October 1st through 3rd. But until then, if anybody wants to reach you, what's the best way to contact you?
You can send me an email at info@amplifyhorseracing.org with any questions that you have. Our website is also amplifyhorseracing.org, and we have a contact form right on the website. And we're across all social media platforms, always sharing little educational tips and tools and facts. So reach out at any time and I will get back to you with an answer.
All right, thank you everyone, and I hope to see you guys next year, if not sooner.
Fingers crossed. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, guys. Thanks
Thank
for having
you.
us.